Hi, I will show you today how to make your own bezels for very little money, and I'll make even a list of expenses. You will need a couple Makins cutter sets, a making texture sheet, a few tiles, a couple tiles, some paper, and 2 or 3 acrylic paints. So here I'm using one of the texture sheets in the set E of Makins. So a set of Makins is around $4.99, so around $5. And I am using copper. I'm going to do 2 bezels, one with copper and the other one with graphite pearl. Those cutter sets, there are 3 in a set, and they are you can get them at Clay Factory for $1.90. I think they're around $3 if you buy them at Hobby Lobby or Makins. But anyway, so you run your clay on a medium and make sure that you set it with the imprint, making a 3D knot printed in the clay, and run it through the through the pasta machine on the same setting to get nice imprints, because Makins is a two-faced texture sheet, so make sure that you don't get the side that leaves imprints, recessed imprints, but you know, prints that kind of show on the outwards of the clay. I'm sorry, I just don't find the word right now. Then get the biggest of your cutters in the set and cut one piece. Then take one tile. You can get these tiles at Lowe's or wherever for anywhere between 50 cents and $1 a piece. You will need 2. I think I paid for mine like 80 cents a piece. Then place a piece of scrap paper on the tile. Place your this will be the backing of your bezel. Then place another piece of paper on top of them, and then the second tile. This will assure that you get very straight bezels. Now I'm making this on a medium thickness. If you want, you can make it on a thicker for the backing. Then place your biggest cutter and then the next one inside and cut. Make sure that your smaller cutter is right in the middle of everything. So if need be, place first your smaller cutter and then move around the bigger one to make sure that you got it properly. Don't lift it yet. Lift the remaining of the clay because you don't want it to get deformed in any way. Then once your backing is baked and cooled off, right, then you need to place some liquid clay on the edges of it. It is on the inside, so not on the side that has the texture sheet imprint. And then make ready some clay on the thinnest setting. Then as I said, take your backing and then rub some TLS liquid clay. Doesn't matter if it is actually TLS, it can be Fimo, liquid Fimo, whatever you have. And it is fine if you are smearing a little bit more towards the inside. It's just fine, there's no problem. Then once you're sure that you did smear very well the liquid clay on the edges, then you lift very gently and carefully the outline cut that you did there with your rigid blade, and very gently detach the inside while holding it on the blade. And that way it will not get stretched too much. And then place it on your back and gently push it so it would reach all the way to the edge, and make sure that it is well, it clings well to the back. You can actually roll a little bit the medallion, because that's what you're obtaining, to make sure that you got a nice and straight line. Do the same with the other one. Again, remove the inside after you've placed the whole piece on your blade, and then place it there. I'm sorry, Whisper just decided to play with one of his squeaky toys. So we might have a little bit of music for a while. And again, make sure that you have set it properly. Whisper, stop it! That you have set it properly. And then once you have done that, I'll show you both ways that you can go forward with this. For both ways, you need to place some liquid clay on the very edge of the medallion. And then you will cut some strips from that clay that's on the thinnest setting. Get out of here! He doesn't want to play with your ball. He's a cat. And make sure that you've smeared well the edges. I am so sorry if this happens more. I'm going to have to redo the sound for this. And then, as I said, cut some strips from your thinner setting sheets that you have run through the pasta machine. For one of them, cut a very, very thin one, about 1 millimeter, and then arrange it on the inside, but turn to the side, so it will show the dowel part. And for now, just set it there to wait for a little bit. Remember that if you let it sit for a little bit, that liquid clay will thicken out, and it will be much easier to work on it without it sliding all over the place. Then cut a little bit of a thicker strip and put it on the edge. And remember, always set it flush with the back, not with the front. And make sure that it is well around the medallion, and it is clinging to the edge. I will show you in a second, but it's remember, it's that distance where I cannot see very well, so it's either I put it wrong or you don't see anything. And then go back, let it be like this, and then go back and arrange that little strip in the center, so it will stick to the edges and it will stand up straight on the side. Of course, I'm using the handle of my faithful handle of the paintbrush to arrange everything. This is a little bit more complicated to do it this way, but it looks cleaner. I will show you how to do on the other one an easier way to do it. Then you see that your edge kind of overlaps. It's a little bit higher than the bezel itself, so you will go in and you will cut whatever is overlapping. It's not very hard to cut. You just go straight with your rigid blade. You cannot trim, because that bezel in itself is still unbaked. And you can bake it first, but then you will not have this edging stick to it so nice, and you'll not be able to do the blending so nicely. So once you've fixed the inside strip, then you go ahead and start cutting the outside after you made sure that it's really sticking to the edge. And this I will make sure to show you properly how to cut. But I've shown you before so many times how to edge that I'll put a few links so you can look at other videos if you want to see a better close-up. But again, I did not want to mess it up and have to reshoot so many times. Then blend the very edge with whatever you use as a small roller. As I said, I'm using my little paintbrush, but see, you just cut around using your rigid blade all the excess, about 2 millimeters from the bottom of that strip. And you do need to cut it wider, because if you cut it too small, then you won't have enough clay to do the blending, and you never know how much you will need. You can cut it thinner if you want. I work better this way because it's easier to remove clay than to add. So once you finish cutting, you just take the small roller, whatever you use instead of a small roller, and you just blend nicely all the edges, and then you finish the blending with your finger. So yeah, well, I'm sorry, here I was absolutely sure that I was in the camera view, and it's all from bad eyesight, because I cannot see at the same time. It's very blurry. Whatever is more than 10-12 inches from my face, I cannot see. It's very blurry. But yeah, this is how you blend nicely at the edge. Remember, you want to make it look like metal, so in this case pretty much like copper. And you blend both on the back and on the front, and then you will smooth it out some more with your fingers to have the very edge of it smooth, even if you have the inside of it with a pattern, because that one you want it to make look like more like an aged antique vintage stuff. And again, you can roll it a little bit to make sure that it's okay. Then on the other one, this time cut a thinner strip and run it all around, because this one you'll use more as of a smearing kind of stuff. You can stretch it a little bit and then grab some liquid clay on your finger, and after you made sure that it is all stuck to the edge, start rubbing that little strip, kind of blending it in with the liquid clay with your finger, and that way you will obtain a type of roughly cut metal look. See, and then you start kind of blending or your intention is to make that little strip of clay practically dissolve a little bit in the liquid clay, so that way you can use it almost like a type of thick paint if you want to hide the seam between the bezel itself and the backing. And then you use both, whatever you use as a roller and your finger, to smooth things out, and make sure that you do the corners, because usually those are forgotten and they are quite important to make things look nice. Now once you've done this, get a little piece of the granite pearl, and then make a small, very very thin snake. Make sure that you make it nice and even. I'm not even mentioning extruder, because the idea is to make bezels as cheap as we can, right? And then place it at the edge of the inner edge of the bezel, and make sure that it's well sticking to the bezel itself. You can use the handle of a paintbrush or your exacto knife to make sure that it's pushed all the way in. And then let's make some bails for these things. And if you don't have jump rings, just get a little bit of wire and wrap it around your the handle of your paintbrush. I'm going to use some silver for the graphite pearl and some copper for the other one. So you wrap it just once around the paintbrush handle and then you cut. Then make sure that the jump ring is even, because the two sides will be a little bit uneven. Make a cut with the exacto knife and insert the jump ring with the opening inside the clay. And then smooth out. As you can see, I prefer to put it on the corner so it would be kind of like diamond shaped pendant. Smooth things out, and then the same for the round one. Make a little cut with the exacto knife right above the baked part, and then insert your jump ring again with the opening inside the clay, and then smooth things out nicely, and then place them again on the paper and on one of the tiles and bake them as per manufacturer's instructions. Once you are done, use acrylics to do some patina, and I will place a link to my how to do patina video, because I don't want to make this video too long. So you get again some scrap clay, and you use the smallest cutter, and then you cut two other pieces out of it. You cut three pieces. One you use it as is, then one you cut it a little bit smaller, and then one you cut it even smaller. That is if you do not have any cabochon molds. You place the squares one on top of each other in decreasing order of size, and then you get a little bit of scrap clay and you make a little snake, and you place it where you have the steps there. Then once you've placed that, turn it upside down and press a little bit on those sides to pretty much even them, so it will get a cabochon shape. That is just starting the process of evening. You can use your roller on that a little bit to make it more smooth, and you use it just straight on your hand, on your finger. And then you can either cut it, or you can just use the little cutter to make sure that it will fit inside the opening of the bezel that you have, and cut it a pinch smaller, maybe like 1/2 millimeter. Now remember the Celtic Knot cane we did the other day. Yes, we are going to cut a slice from it, and I'm going to have a lot of problems to cut a slice, because apparently today I forgot how to cut slices from canes, but I will prevail. Yes. No. I need one more. Yes. Yes, this time I did it. And then just put it as a veneer on top of that cabochon. And you can press it a little bit. Make sure that you don't grab any air pockets between the slice of cane and the scrap clay cabochon. Check again with the little cutter that it's not too wide. Set it aside, and let's make the cabochon for the other bezel. Now this time I am using a cabochon, just in case you do have a cabochon mold. If you don't, then just do exactly like for the other one. Just make circles smaller and smaller, put them one on top of the other, and then kind of smooth out. But the way that I do the cabochons, I press as hard as I can, then I go with the roller on top of it, and then I will use the flexible blade to shave exactly like I would do with a satin slice, to make sure that my the base of my cabochon is perfectly straight. Then I take it out, I verify, yes, it fits in there. It actually has a little bit room left on the sides, so that's perfect because that will be room for the cane, and I will be using the rose cane. Now the rose cane is a little bit smaller in slice than I need it to be, so I will be getting a little bit of wax paper and start thinning it out. That's why I cut a thicker slice. Now make sure that you turn it around because otherwise you will deform it. Just do only a couple rolls at a time and turn it about 45 degrees, not 90 degrees, to make sure that you get a nice and even smoothing out until you make it large enough to fit the cabochon. If it's not yet, from time to time, remove it from the wax paper so it would not be stuck and will be able to move freely and get wider. Now notice something, there will be a little bit of bleeding of the red clay into the white. We will take care of that before getting it in the oven. Then make sure that your slice of cane is veneered nicely on the cabochon and you have no air pockets. And then trim if it needs to be trimmed. It is a little bit bigger than smaller than the circle. So at this point you will just trim whatever's overlapping the edge, set it in and press. Because when you press, you will have it properly fitting into the edges, stretching out into the edges. Make sure that when you place the liquid clay, you push it all the way to the edges of the inside edges of the bezel. So this one is a little bit smaller than the bezel opening. So after you place it in, then press very gently to make sure that it will stretch to fit properly, and then make sure that it is nice and even. And you can use your blade for that, but make sure that it is inside that strip, it's not overlapping, and also that there is no space between the cabochon and the bezel. And then you do the same for the other one. As you notice, this one is a little bit too large, so you can go ahead and squeeze it until it will fit. Just keep squeezing it equally, the same as you would reduce a cane. It's the exact same thing until it fits properly in the bezel. Again, make sure that it doesn't overlap the inside of the bezel, and there is no space between the cabochon and the inside of the bezel. And once you've done that, get a little piece of paper towel and put some alcohol on it, and then gently wipe the white area on the rose cane, just to remove whatever bleeding might have happened from the red clay, because unfortunately that's what happens with the red clay. It bleeds and drops colors very easily. And there we go. We have two nice pendants. I've varnished them. One is antique copperish with the rose, and the other one is antique silver with a Celtic knot. So happy claying!